All right, you are listening to another episode of Transparency and Merit. I'm with Brian. I'm Joe. You cannot kick me out of school, Brian.
That's right. Well, I guess Governor Newsome has basically stopped the suspension of children, and I wonder if that is a good idea or a bad idea. But
That's right.
yeah.
SB 419. It states here California schools will no longer be able to suspend students in elementary and middle schools for disrupting school activities or willfully defying the authority of teachers or administrators. And no doubt, and this is an expansion of an already set law I had no idea about. That K through third grade cannot be suspended. I think I was telling you earlier. I always felt it was. I don't think I'd ever seen a third grader get suspended or heard. I haven't heard of a third grader being suspended. Now I know why. It's against the law. But now they've expanded that to fourth and fifth grade. So you cannot suspend a child for willful defiance, which I find kind of strange. And it's almost like, it's more than a get out of jail free card. This is more like a license to defy.
Well, I mean, and basically, what are we teaching our children? Because what are we teaching children? And I think the main reason you go to school is to is basically to increase their economic value. And how much value is a child going to have if he has, through his whole life, through K through 12, he has been able to be willfully defiant? Because you can't do that with your employer. Your employer can fire you. And you want to kind of teach them a little bit what's in store for the real world. And to a degree, a suspension is like, hey, you're really messing up. You're really fouling it up. And we're just giving, it seems like we're just giving the worst, worst of human.
This is an amazing message. First of all, what this also does here in California is that you've just, by expanding this to grades 4 and 5, you've just outdated all the 4th and 5th grade teachers, in my opinion, because now, and I don't think this has been measured yet, but oh my, when word spreads through a school that they can't be suspended for their actions, you've now made it okay for certain kids, not all, but certain kids are going to catch on to this. And I've heard about, and I could say a lot more about it, but I'm not going to. But the effects of this are profound. And the teachers that are currently already teaching those classes, they're not going to be able to handle this. They're going to have to all be retrained. This is a whole different ballgame.
Well, it's giving into the worst of the elements. And this looks like, the civil rights industrial complex has its hand. And this is something that really wasn't that debated. How effective is this? Why is this being done? Not suspending kids from school. It's just like, like I said, if you talk to your employer and you're willfully disruptive.
Now, I'm just going to cite this Los Angeles Times article that says it ends a practice that many say is counterproductive and unfairly applied to black students, which I found to be a very controversial statement for the LA Times to make. I'm pretty surprised, but that's in an article on September 10th. California expands ban on willful defiance suspensions in schools. So, no. Maybe we should talk with Nina Agrawal, the staff writer. I'd like to know more about this. Like, what kind of? There must be studies and data to back up that what was said in that article, in that comment there.
Well, I mean, I've heard these kind of arguments before, and they really just don't. A lot of it just doesn't necessarily wash with me. I mean, it's like, are we, even if blacks are more likely to be affected? I mean, does something like this, something this drastic, does it really help the problem? I mean, like I said, it didn't seem like this law, there was much debate on it. But I could be wrong on that.
What is it saying, though? I'm not sure what the message is here. To end suspensions for willful defiance, and that's in some way it's suggesting here that it's it's connected to race. So this article
is willful defiance okay? Is that right. Behavior all right? And if more blacks are
Oh, by the way, it's also banned for grades 6 through 8 for 5 years only, which is unbelievable. That is a huge, from 4th to 8th grade now for at least 5 years. None of those students can be suspended. So they are making it. I guess it's not important anymore. This willful defiance, which presents itself. Willful defiance presents itself in some pretty amazing ways. I mean, what you're talking about here is kids can really get away with a tremendous amount. It seems like now there's no line in the sand, where before a principal or an AP, an associate principal, would have a lot of authority. Suddenly that authority gets chopped really hard. And it doesn't take a whole class of children to be talking back and being willfully defiant. It could start with one bad seed, especially in those age groups from 4th to 8th grade, where the kids are so impressionable that if they are in a classroom where one of their peer models is off the rails, defying everything, that's going to spread like wildfire in these schools. So it's a pretty shocking law, in my opinion. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. It does seem like it's a rather shocking law, and I just, I'd like to see the studies, and even the studies, in my opinion, I'd like to know, like, in depth, how they came up with these conclusions.
How do you feel about this? Senator Nancy Skinner, a Democrat from Berkeley, and the bill's author, said ending willful defiance suspensions will keep kids in school where they belong and where teachers and counselors can help them thrive.
You know what? Can they really? Because right now we seem to be a society that doesn't, that has no standards. And how much of a society? How much should we bend to the worst of society? Because I think when you see the worst in society and you bend to them, it seems like society tends to get worse. Thomas Sowell once talked about the different. There were two blackouts, one in 1965 and another in 1978. 1965, the blackout in New York, limited crime, or like hardly anything. 1978, there was a huge spike in crime after the blackout. We've become much more of a permissive society. And is it making us more safe? Is it making the kids, when they get out of school, productive members of society? which is one of the things that we wanted to do, but it doesn't seem like that's the case anymore. And it's like these kind of social experiments and no standards, I don't think is really a good thing. But, I could be wrong on that. I mean, sometimes people can be more harsh, are too harsh. But I think in this case, Joe, I think that, I think that this is something that we've really lowered the bar and lowered the standards. But I'd like to see...
Well, what it says here, research has shown that suspensions and the accompanying loss of instructional time disproportionately affects students of color, particularly African Americans. In 2017 and 18, African American student suspensions represented 17% of total suspensions across the state, even though African Americans make up less than 6% of the total students in the state, according to the California Department of Education data.
So, like I said, should we be giving in to kids that act the worst and behave the worst just because of their race? I mean, shouldn't we have standards? And I mean, and if they're being unfair, that's one thing, and that should be stopped if they're being mistreated. But I don't.
By the way, you want to hear the most ignorant comment, a quote that I can't believe was used in this article. This might be the one of, I'm sorry to get on a pedestal here. I'm trying to be as neutral as I can, but this is unbelievable. The quote is, no student, this comes from Angela McNair Turner, a staff attorney at Public Counsel. No student should be set back in their education for something as minor as chewing gum or talking in class. And I know I've bared witness to fourth graders doing an awful lot more than chewing gum or just talking in class, Angela. I totally... I'm going to have to disagree with that comment entirely. SB 419 is a huge step forward in addressing equity in schools across the state and eliminating the school-to-prison pipeline for youth in grades K through...
that is just... Okay.
Yes, so it's a pipeline. Suspensions are a pipeline to jail.
Yeah, it seems like we're giving in to the lowest common denominator, and every time you give into it, the lowest common denominator seems to win, and we're going to become more of a place of social squalor and barbarity.
We'd really like your comments on this topic. Look it up in California, SB 419. Gavin Newsome signed it into play recently in September, and we'd like you to like, subscribe, and leave comments. This is an interesting topic.
Yeah, it is. All right, that'll do it.
All right, thanks again for listening to Transparency and Merit. Go to our website, transparencyandmerit.com.